The morning sun beat down on Fort Bragg, North Carolina, turning the tarmac into a shimmering sea of heat. Senior Airman Claire Dawson stood in the shadow of the rigger shed, her hands moving with quiet precision as she folded another T-11 parachute. The fabric billowed slightly in the breeze before she pressed it down, her fingers tracing the familiar pattern she'd done 1,000 times before. Around her, the sounds of the airborne unit echoed across the drop zone, shouts from the parade ground, the rumble of a C-130 taxiing in the distance, the sharp bark of a jumpmaster calling cadence. But inside the rigger shed it was different. Quieter. Lonelier. Claire didn't mind the quiet. Not anymore. She folded the canopy with steady hands, checking each panel, each line, each connection point. Lives depended on this work. She knew that better than anyone. Every stitch mattered. Every fold could mean the difference between a safe landing and a funeral with full military honors. "Hey, Dawson," the voice cut through her concentration. She looked up to see Sergeant Kyle Brennan leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, a smirk pulling at the corner of his mouth. Behind him stood 2 other riggers from the day shift, both men, both wearing the same expression of casual contempt. "Yeah," Claire replied, her voice even. "You done with that shoot yet? We got a full manifest today. Can't have you daydreaming in here while the real work's happening outside." Claire's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. "I'm doing my job, Sergeant." "Same as always." Brennan let out a short laugh. "Right, your job. Folding chutes. Must be nice having such a safe position. Not like the rest of us who actually jump out of planes." One of the men behind him snickered. Claire turned back to the parachute, her hands resuming their work. She'd heard it all before. The jokes. The assumptions. The dismissive glances. To them, she was just another support airman, someone who stayed on the ground while the real soldiers earned their wings. They had no idea. "Just make sure you finish that stack by 1400, Brennan said, pushing off the doorframe. "We've got a VIP jump scheduled tomorrow. General's coming in to observe. Can't afford any screw-ups from the basement crew." Basement crew? That's what they called the riggers. The people who packed the parachutes, maintained the gear, did the unglamorous work that kept everyone else alive. It wasn't meant as a compliment. The men walked away, their laughter fading into the noise of the base. Claire exhaled slowly, forcing her shoulders to relax. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she didn't need their approval. She had a job to do, and she did it better than anyone else in this unit. But some days, it was hard not to feel invisible. She finished the T-11 and moved it to the inspection table, then reached for the next chute on the rack. Her fingers brushed against the fabric, and for just a moment she closed her eyes. In her mind, she wasn't in the rigger shed. She was at 12,000 feet, the wind roaring in her ears. The world spread out below like a map made of green and gold. She remembered the feeling of stepping out into nothing, the heart-stopping free fall, the snap of the canopy deploying above her. She remembered the silence that followed, the peace of floating back to earth suspended between sky and ground. She remembered when she had been more than just the girl who folded parachutes. But that was before. Before the injury. Before the medical review board. Before they'd reassigned her to ground duties and told her she'd never jump again. Claire opened her eyes and got back to work. The afternoon stretched on. The heat inside the shed became stifling, but Claire kept going. Fold, check, pack, seal. Fold, check, pack, seal. Each parachute received the same meticulous attention. She didn't cut corners. She didn't rush. Around 1600 hours, the door opened again. This time it was Master Sergeant Linda Torres, the senior rigger on base. Torres was in her late 40s, built like a bulldog with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd been packing chutes since before Claire was born. "Dawson," Torres said, walking over to the inspection table. "How many you got done?" 18, Claire replied. "Working on 19. Torres picked up one of the completed chutes and ran her hands over it, checking the folds, testing the tension on the lines. After a moment, she nodded. "Good work, clean." "Thank you, Master Sergeant." Torres set the chute down and crossed her arms. "You hear about the VIP jump tomorrow?" Brennan mentioned it. "General Hastings is flying in. Wants to do a demonstration jump with some of the team. Big PR thing. They're bringing in a camera crew and everything." Torres paused. "They asked me to personally inspect every chute that's going up." Claire met her eyes. "I'll make sure they're perfect." "I know you will." Torres glanced toward the door, then back at Claire. Her voice dropped slightly. You doing okay, Dawson? It was a simple question, but it carried weight. Torres was one of the few people on base who knew Claire's full story. One of the few who'd seen her before the reassignment. I'm fine, Claire said. Torres studied her for a long moment. You know, just because you're on the ground now doesn't mean you're not still a soldier. This work matters. I know. Do you? Claire didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands, strong hands calloused from work, scarred from 100 small cuts and burns. Hands that used to pull risers and steer canopies through the sky. I know it matters, she said finally. But it's not the same, Torres sighed. No, it's not. She clapped Claire on the shoulder. But you're good at it. Better than anyone I've seen. Don't forget that. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. And Dawson? Yes, Master Sergeant? Don't let those boys get to you. Half of them couldn't pack a chute to save their lives. Literally. A small smile tugged at Claire's lips. Understood. Torres left and Claire was alone again. She finished the 19th chute as the sun began to sink lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the shed. Tomorrow would be a big day. A general. A demonstration. Cameras. Everyone would be watching and she would be here in the shed doing the work nobody saw. Claire rolled her shoulders and reached for the next parachute. As she did, her sleeve rode up slightly, revealing the edge of a tattoo on her right forearm. A detailed image of a parachute in freefall, canopy still packed, lines trailing behind it. Below it, in small precise letters, were numbers that told a story. A story nobody at Fort Bragg knew. Not yet. The next morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that made for perfect jump conditions. Clear skies, light winds, visibility for miles. Claire arrived at the rigger shed before dawn, as she always did. The base was still quiet, the air cool and damp with dew. She unlocked the shed and flipped on the lights, flooding the space with harsh fluorescent white. Today wasn't a normal day. Today every parachute had to be flawless. She'd been working for about an hour when the first of the jump team arrived at the nearby hangar. Through the shed's small window, Claire could see them gathering. 12 soldiers in jumpsuits moving with the easy confidence of people who'd done this 100 times. They laughed and joked, checking their gear, running through pre-flight routines. She recognized most of them. Brennan was there, of course. So was Captain Mike Holloway, the unit's primary jump master, a tall man with 20 years of service and a reputation for running things by the book. There were several younger paratroopers eager and hungry to impress. And standing slightly apart from the group was a woman in her 50s wearing a flight suit with stars on the collar. General Hastings. Claire had seen her photo in the base newspaper. Hastings had been a combat helicopter pilot in Desert Storm, had commanded units in Iraq and Afghanistan, and was now one of the highest-ranking women in the Army. The PR team was making a big deal out of her doing a demonstration jump, proof that the military was committed to women in combat roles. That age was just a number, that leadership meant leading from the front. Claire respected that. She did. But she also knew how these things worked. The general would get her photo op, the cameras would get their footage, and tomorrow everything would go back to normal. The men would still make their jokes. The real soldiers would still jump. And Claire would still be folding parachutes in the shed. She turned back to her work. By 0800, Master Sergeant Torres arrived to begin the final inspections. She worked alongside Claire in comfortable silence, checking each chute with the thoroughness of someone who understood that lives hung in the balance. Literally. These are good, Torres said after inspecting the 6th parachute. Really good. You've outdone yourself, Dawson. Just doing the job, Master Sergeant. Torres gave her a look. It's more than that, and you know it. Before Claire could respond, the shed door swung open. Captain Holloway stepped inside, his expression all business. Behind him came 2 of his team members carrying equipment bags. Torres, Holloway said with a nod. We're here to pick up the chutes for today's jump. General wants to get airborne by 0930. They're ready, sir, Torres replied. Dawson's been working since 0500. Every chute has been double-checked. Holloway's eyes flicked to Claire, lingering for just a moment before moving past her like she was part of the furniture. Good. We'll need 12 main chutes and 12 reserves. I want your personal guarantee that every single one is good to go. You have it, sir, Torres said firmly. The men began loading the parachutes onto rolling carts. Claire stayed out of the way, watching them work. They handled the chutes roughly, not carelessly exactly, but without the reverence she felt each time she touched one. To them, a parachute was just equipment, a tool. To her, it was something else, something sacred. Brennan appeared in the doorway, grinning. "Hey, Captain. General's asking if she can get a custom chute. You know, something in her favorite color. Maybe with some stars and stripes?" Holloway didn't smile. "Brennan, knock it off. This is a professional operation." "Yes, sir. Just trying to lighten the mood, sir." "Well, don't." Holloway turned back to Torres. "We'll be doing equipment checks at 0900 in the hangar. If there are any issues, I want to know immediately." "Understood, sir." The team finished loading the chutes and wheeled them out. The shed fell quiet again. Torres let out a long breath. "Bunch of peacocks," she muttered. More worried about looking good for the cameras than doing the job right. Claire said nothing. She'd learned a long time ago that silence was safer than agreement. "You want to come watch the jump?" Torres asked. "You've earned it." "You did most of the work." Claire shook her head. "I've got more chutes to pack for next week's training rotation. I should get started." Torres studied her with those sharp, knowing eyes. "You know, Dawson, one of these days you're going to have to stop hiding in here." "I'm not hiding." "I'm working." "Uh-huh." Torres headed toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I think you're 10 times the soldier any of those showboats will ever be. I just wish you believed it too." She left before Claire could respond. Alone again, Claire moved to the window and watched as the jump team gathered around the carts of parachutes outside the hangar. She could see Holloway directing the operation, pointing and giving orders. She could see Brennan laughing at something, slapping another soldier on the back. She could see General Hastings standing slightly apart, calm and composed, reviewing paperwork on a clipboard. And she could see the C-130 on the tarmac, engines warming up, ready to carry them all into the sky. Claire's right hand drifted unconsciously to her left forearm, fingers tracing the outline of the tattoo hidden beneath her sleeve. The Freefall chute. The numbers that represented jumps. Hundreds of them. Jumps most of these soldiers had never even heard of. But that was before. That was a different life. A different Claire. She forced herself to turn away from the window and got back to work. At 09:15, the announcement came over the base's loudspeaker system. "Attention on the drop zone. Airborne operations in progress. All non-essential personnel clear the area. Repeat. Airborne operations in progress." Claire could hear the C-130's engines roaring to life, the deep thunder of propellers biting into air. Despite herself, she moved back to the window. The jump team was boarding now, filing up the rear ramp in their bulky gear. General Hastings was third in line, moving with the same efficiency as the soldiers half her age. The camera crew stood off to the side, filming everything. Within minutes, the ramp closed. The aircraft began to taxi. Claire watched it roll down the runway, gaining speed, then lifting gracefully into the clear morning sky. It banked to the east, climbing steadily until it was just a dark speck against the blue. Somewhere up there, 12 people were running through their pre-jump checks. Somewhere up there, Captain Holloway was barking instructions, making sure everyone knew their role. Somewhere up there, soldiers were checking the parachutes Claire had folded with her own hands, trusting their lives to her work without even knowing her name. She wondered if any of them ever thought about the people who packed their chutes. If they ever considered the hours of training, the attention to detail, the weight of responsibility that came with that job. Probably not. To them, the riggers were just support personnel. Background noise. Not real soldiers. Claire turned away from the window and sat down at her workbench. She had more chutes to pack. Work didn't stop just because there was a show going on outside. But as she reached for the next parachute, she heard something that made her freeze. Voices. Raised voices. Coming from the radio on Torres's desk. Problem with the primary chute. Claire's head snapped up. She moved quickly to the desk and turned up the volume. The voice was Holloway's, crackling with static but clear enough. "Say again, ground control. We have a malfunction. One of the primary chutes is not deploying correctly in the test check." A pause. Then another voice, calmer, controlled. "Ground control. Copy that, Jump Master. Can you identify which chute?" "Negative. We're running diagnostics now." Jumper is checking the pack. Claire's heart began to pound. A malfunction. During a VIP jump. During a jump she had packed. Impossible. She'd checked every chute 3 times. Torres had inspected them. There was no way. Ground control, this is Jumpmaster Holloway. We've identified the issue. It's General Hastings' primary chute. The deployment bag is tangled. We cannot use this chute. Claire's blood ran cold. The General's chute. Her chute. The one she'd personally packed last night. The one she'd inspected until her eyes burned. The one she'd sealed with her own hands. Copy, Jumpmaster. What is your recommendation? There was a long pause. When Holloway's voice came back, it was tight. We're swapping her to reserve and aborting her jump. Too risky. We'll proceed with 11 jumpers. Negative, Jumpmaster. A new voice cut in, sharp, female, authoritative. General Hastings, I did not fly out here to sit on the sidelines. Do we have any other primary chutes on board? Ma'am, with respect, we only loaded the exact number needed. Then I'll use someone else's chute. Lieutenant Chen, you're sitting this one out. I'll take yours. General, I really must advise. Your advice is noted, Captain. Now get me a working chute. We're burning daylight. Claire stood frozen by the radio, her mind racing. A malfunction. In her work. In the most important jump of the month, it wasn't possible. She'd been so careful. So meticulous, unless she'd missed something. Unless in her exhaustion, in her routine, she'd made a mistake. A small mistake. The kind of mistake that could kill someone. Her hands were shaking. The radio crackled again. Ground control, this is Jumpmaster Holloway. We are proceeding with the jump. General Hastings is using Lieutenant Chen's primary chute. All other jumpers are green. Beginning final countdown. Claire's legs felt weak. She sank into the chair, staring at the radio. If something went wrong, if the General's reserve failed, if another chute malfunctioned, it would be on her. Her responsibility, her failure, and everyone would know. Everyone would know that the girl who just folded parachutes had killed a general. Claire sat motionless, listening to the radio chatter as the C-130 circled over the drop zone. Her mind raced through every step of packing that parachute. Every fold, every line check, every seal. She'd done everything right. She knew she had, but doubt crept in like poison. What if she'd been distracted? What if she'd rushed one step, just one, and missed something critical? What if this was the moment her entire career had been leading to? The moment she failed when it mattered most. Jumpers, stand up. Holloway's voice boomed through the radio. Claire could picture them all, lined up at the open door of the aircraft, wind screaming past, the ground 12,000 feet below. Hook up, the familiar commands. She'd heard them 1,000 times. She'd responded to them herself back when she was the one standing in that door. Check static lines. Her hands gripped the edge of the desk. Through the window, she could see a small crowd gathering near the drop zone. Camera crew, base personnel, officers who'd come to watch the show. They were all looking up, waiting. Sound off for equipment check. The count would be going down the line now. Each jumper calling out their number, 12, 11, 10, all the way to 1, stand by. Claire held her breath. Green light, go. Through the window, she saw them. Tiny figures tumbling from the aircraft. Dark specks against the bright sky. 1, 2, 3, they came fast, dropping in sequence. She counted them. 8, 9, 10, 11, they are the 12th jumper. Had to be General Hastings. For a few seconds, they were all in freefall, dropping like stones. Then, one by one, the canopies bloomed open. White flowers against blue sky, beautiful, perfect. Claire counted them again. 11 canopies, all deployed. All good, but where was the 12th? Her heart hammered against her ribs. She pressed closer to the window, scanning the sky desperately. Then she saw it. The 12th canopy opening, smooth and clean. General Hastings descending under a perfect parachute. Claire's legs nearly gave out. She grabbed the desk for support, breathing hard. They were all safe. All 12 jumpers floating down. The demonstration going exactly as planned. The crowd on the ground was cheering. She could hear it even from inside the shed. But the relief lasted only a moment before reality crashed back in. There had been a malfunction. In a chute she'd packed. And even though no one had gotten hurt, even though the problem had been caught in time, it was still her failure, her mistake, and everyone would know. The radio crackled. Ground control, Jumpmaster Holloway. All jumpers away, all canopies deployed. We're coming around for landing. Copy that, Jumpmaster. Nice work up there. Claire sank back into the chair, her mind spinning. She had to figure out what went wrong. Had to find that chute, inspect it, understand where she'd made the error. Maybe if she could identify the problem, explain it, show that it was a freak occurrence and not negligence. The shed door slammed open. Master Sergeant Torres stood in the doorway, breathing hard like she'd been running. Her face was flushed, her expression dark. Dawson, with me now. Claire stood immediately. Master Sergeant, I can explain. Not here. Captain Holloway wants to see you the second they land. He's already called for an investigation. The word hit like a punch to the gut. Investigation. The chute I packed. Claire started. I know which chute, Torres said sharply. What I don't know is how the hell it happened. You're the best rigger I have, Dawson. The best I've ever seen, so you better have a damn good explanation because Holloway is out for blood. They walked quickly across the tarmac toward the drop zone. Claire's mind was already running through her defense, trying to remember every detail of packing that specific parachute. But the memories blurred together. She'd packed so many, done the same routine so many times. How could she prove she'd done everything right? The jumpers were landing now, one by one, touching down with practiced precision. The camera crew rushed to film General Hastings' landing. She came down smooth and professional, flaring her canopy at exactly the right moment, touching down light as a feather. The small crowd applauded. Hastings gathered her chute with quick, efficient movements, then turned to wave at the cameras. Perfect PR, perfect optics, everything the base had wanted, except for the malfunction no one was talking about yet. Captain Holloway landed 30 seconds later. The moment his boots hit the ground, he was out of his harness and striding toward the hangar, his expression thunderous. He spotted Torres and Claire approaching and changed direction, heading straight for them. Senior Airman Dawson, he barked while still 10 feet away. I want to know how a chute leaves your shed with a tangled deployment bag. I want to know how that passes your inspection. And I want to know right goddamn now. Claire stood at attention. Sir, I followed every protocol. I inspected that chute personally 3 times before. Obviously not well enough. Holloway was in her face now, his jaw clenched. Do you have any idea what could have happened up there? Do you understand that you nearly killed a general officer? Sir, if I could examine the chute, I can determine what... You'll determine nothing. You're off chute duty effective immediately. This is going to review board and you better pray they don't find criminal negligence. The words landed like physical blows. Criminal negligence. Her career wasn't just at risk, she could face charges. Prison time, Captain Holloway, everyone turned. General Hastings was walking toward them, still in her jumpsuit, helmet tucked under her arm. Her expression was calm, almost curious. Holloway immediately shifted to attention. General, ma'am, I apologize for the equipment failure. I take full responsibility for not catching it during pre-flight. Hastings waved a hand dismissively. At ease, Captain. No harm done. I've had worse scares than a tangled bag. Her eyes moved to Claire. This is the rigger? Yes, ma'am. Senior Airman Claire Dawson. She'll be removed from duty pending investigation. Hastings studied Claire with sharp, intelligent eyes. The kind of eyes that had commanded soldiers in combat. That had made life and death decisions under fire. Tell me, Senior Airman, how long have you been packing chutes? Claire swallowed. 3 years at this base, ma'am. But I've been... 3 years, Hastings interrupted. And how many chutes have you packed in that time? Approximately 4,000, ma'am. Holloway's eyes widened slightly. He clearly hadn't known that number. 4,000, Hastings repeated. And how many malfunctions? Claire met her eyes. Prior to today, ma'am? 0. Silence fell over the group. Even Holloway seemed caught off guard. Hastings nodded slowly. 0 malfunctions in 4,000 packs. That's a better record than most riggers achieve in their entire career. She turned to Holloway. Captain, I want to see that chute. The one with the malfunction? Bring it to the hangar. Yes, ma'am. Right away. Hastings looked back at Claire. You come too, Senior Airman. I want you to walk me through exactly how you packed it. Ma'am, with respect, Holloway interjected. It might be better to have an independent inspector examine the equipment, to avoid any appearance of, I know what I want, Captain. Hastings' voice didn't rise, but it carried absolute authority. Get the chute now. Holloway's jaw worked. But he nodded sharply and headed toward where the team was gathering their equipment. Torres gave Claire a meaningful look. One that said, be careful, be smart, don't make this worse. Then followed Holloway. Claire was left standing alone with the general. For a long moment, Hastings said nothing. She just looked at Claire with those piercing eyes as if reading something written beneath the surface. Then she spoke quietly. You've jumped before, haven't you? The question caught Claire completely off guard. Ma'am? The question caught Claire completely off guard. Ma'am? You've jumped. I can tell. Something about the way you watched us land, the way you're standing right now. Hastings tilted her head slightly. So why are you packing chutes instead of jumping them? Claire's throat tightened. No one at Fort Bragg had asked her that question directly. Not in 2 years. Medical reassignment, ma'am, she said quietly. I was injured during a training exercise. The review board determined I was unfit for jump status. What kind of injury? Compound fracture of the left tibia and fibula, ma'am. Required surgery and 18 months of physical therapy. I requested return to jump status last year, but the board denied it. Said the risk of re-injury was too high. Hastings was quiet for a moment. And yet you stayed. Stayed in this unit doing the groundwork, watching everyone else do what you can't anymore. It wasn't a question, but Claire answered anyway. Yes, ma'am. That takes a special kind of strength, Hastings said. A different kind than jumping out of planes. Maybe harder. Before Claire could respond, Holloway returned carrying the parachute in question. Torres was right behind him, along with Sergeant Brennan and 2 other members of the jump team. Here's the chute, General, Holloway said, laying it out on a nearby equipment table. Hastings moved to the table, and everyone else circled around. Claire stepped forward reluctantly, her stomach churning. This was it. The moment of truth. Holloway pointed to the deployment bag. You can see here the lines are tangled. When we did the pre-jump check, the bag wouldn't release properly. Classic packing error. Claire leaned in, studying the deployment bag carefully. Her eyes traced the lines, following each one from canopy to connector. And then she saw it, her blood went cold. That's not a packing error, she said quietly. Everyone looked at her. What did you say? Holloway demanded. Claire's hands moved over the lines, her fingers finding the problem. This tangle, it didn't happen during packing. Look here. She pointed to where 2 lines crossed over each other. These lines are twisted in opposite directions. That only happens if someone manually tangled them after the chute was sealed. Silence. What are you suggesting? Holloway's voice was dangerous. Claire looked up, meeting his eyes. I'm suggesting, sir, that someone sabotaged this parachute after I packed it. The word hung in the air like a live grenade. Sabotage. Holloway's face went red. That's a serious accusation, Senior Airman. Do you have any idea what you're saying? Yes, sir. Claire's voice was steady now, her fear replaced by cold certainty. I sealed this chute at 1900 hours last night. I logged it personally. Master Sergeant Torres witnessed the seal. This tangle could not have occurred during packing. The physics don't work. Someone opened this chute after I sealed it and deliberately created this malfunction. Brennan let out a harsh laugh. Oh, come on. She's just trying to cover her ass. Nobody sabotaged anything. She screwed up and now she's inventing conspiracy theories. But General Hastings was studying the lines carefully, her expression thoughtful. Show me, she said to Claire. Claire's hands moved with practiced precision. When you pack a deployment bag, the lines feed through in a specific pattern. They can't cross like this unless the bag is opened and the lines are manually rerouted. And see here, she pointed to a small tear in the deployment bag's fabric. This is fresh. The material around it isn't worn. This was done recently, probably within the last few hours. Torres leaned in, examining the tear. Her face went pale. She's right. I've been doing this for 23 years. That's not packing damage. That's tampering. Holloway's expression shifted from anger to something else, concern, maybe even fear. If what you're saying is true, then someone on this base deliberately tried to cause a parachute malfunction during a VIP jump. That's attempted murder. That's treason. Or, Brennan said quickly, it's a desperate rigger making things up to save her career. Occam's razor, people. The simplest explanation is usually right. But Hastings wasn't listening to Brennan. She was watching Claire with those sharp, calculating eyes. Senior Airman Dawson, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. Do you know who might have done this? Claire's mind raced. Who had access to the chutes after she'd sealed them? They'd been locked in the shed overnight. Only 3 people had keys, herself, Torres, and... Her eyes moved to Holloway. The captain's face was unreadable, but something flickered in his eyes. Just for a second. The chutes were locked in the rigger shed from 1900 last night until 0600 this morning when Master Sergeant Torres and I arrived, Claire said carefully. Only key holders could have accessed them during that time. That's not true, Holloway said immediately. The shed was opened at 05:30 this morning for the pre-flight equipment check. My team was there. Any of them could have... He stopped abruptly. Could have what, Captain? Hastings asked quietly. Holloway's jaw clenched. Could have accessed the chutes. I'm just saying the timeline isn't as narrow as Dawson is suggesting. But Claire was putting pieces together now. The pre-flight check. Holloway had been there personally overseeing everything. He'd insisted on inspecting the equipment himself, and he'd been the one who discovered the malfunction in the air. What if he'd created the malfunction? What if he'd planned to discover it? Abort the general's jump and make himself look like the hero who'd saved her life? A captain who personally caught a rigger's mistake and prevented a disaster? That was a career-making story. That was a path to promotion, but she couldn't prove it. Not yet. I want security footage, Hastings said abruptly. From the rigger shed and the surrounding area. From 1900 hours last night until the chutes were loaded this morning. Captain Holloway, make it happen. General, with respect, I don't think... That wasn't a request, Captain. It was an order. Holloway's face went hard. Yes, ma'am. He pulled out his radio and made the call. While he was talking, Brennan shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances with the other members of the jump team. Claire watched them all carefully. Someone here knew something. She could feel it. Torres moved closer to Claire and spoke quietly. You sure about this? If you're wrong, your career is over. If you're right... She trailed off, but the implication was clear. If Claire was right, she was accusing a superior officer of a crime that could send him to military prison for life. I'm sure, Claire said. 20 minutes later, they were in the base security office crowded around a bank of monitors. The security chief, a grizzled staff sergeant named Pulowski, pulled up the footage from the rigger shed. Starting at 1900 hours yesterday, he said, typing commands into the computer. Fast-forwarding. Nothing. Nothing. Wait. He stopped the playback. The timestamp read 04:47:23. On the screen, a figure approached the rigger shed in the pre-dawn darkness. The camera angle was poor and the lighting worse, but Claire could make out enough details. Male, tall, wearing a duty uniform. The figure produced a key, unlocked the shed, and went inside. The timestamp ticked forward. 4 minutes passed. Then the figure emerged, locked the door behind him and walked away. Can you get a better angle? Hastings asked. Pulowski switched to a different camera, one covering the main walkway. The figure passed under a light, and for just a moment his face was visible. Sergeant Kyle Brennan. The room went silent. All eyes turned to Brennan. He was standing near the back and his face had gone white. I can explain, he said quickly. I was just doing a preliminary check, making sure everything was ready for the morning. I didn't touch anything, I swear. You just admitted to entering a secured area without authorization, Hastings said coldly. At 04:47 in the morning, 43 minutes before the official equipment check. And you didn't touch anything? I was trying to help. I knew it was a big day, I just wanted to make sure. Show me the footage from inside the shed, Hastings said to Pulowski. The security chief shook his head. No internal cameras, ma'am. Budget cuts. We only cover the perimeter. Brennan's expression shifted. Relief quickly hidden. Without internal footage, there was no way to prove what he'd done inside the shed. But Claire was thinking. Brennan had access. He had opportunity. But did he have motive? She thought back over the past few months. The constant jokes. The dismissive comments. The way he seemed to take pleasure in reminding her that she was just a rigger, just support, not a real soldier. Had it been more than just casual cruelty? Had it been something personal? Sergeant Brennan, Claire said quietly. You were up for promotion last month, weren't you? Senior NCO position, head rigger. His eyes snapped to her. Oh, what's that got to do with anything? Master Sergeant Torres told me the board was deciding between you and someone else. They chose the other candidate. Said you lacked attention to detail. Claire took a step toward him, and I was the one who filed the report. I documented 3 separate instances where you'd cut corners on safety checks. That report went to the promotion board. Brennan's face flushed red. You arrogant bitch. You cost me that promotion. 5 years I've been working toward that position, and you're not even a real jumper anymore. You're just some washed-up has-been who folds laundry. So you decided to frame her, Hastings said. It wasn't a question. Make it look like she'd made a critical error. Destroy her career the way you think she destroyed yours. I wouldn't. Brennan was stammering now, backing toward the door. You can't prove anything. So what if I checked the shed early? That doesn't mean I touched the chutes. This is all speculation. Captain Holloway stepped forward. His expression was complicated. Anger, yes, but also something that looked like shame. Actually, Sergeant, we can prove it. Every parachute packed at this facility has a unique seal number logged in the system. The seal can only be opened once. After that, it's broken and has to be replaced. He pulled out his phone, pulled up a file, and showed it to Hastings. I photographed all the chutes during the pre-flight check at 0530. Standard procedure. The general chute, the one Dawson packed, had seal number 74392. He looked at Brennan. When I discovered the malfunction in the air, the chute had seal number 74415. A different seal, meaning someone had opened the original pack and resealed it. Claire felt a rush of vindication so strong it made her dizzy. Brennan's face crumpled. It wasn't supposed to be dangerous. I just wanted to scare her. Just wanted her to feel what it's like to fail at something important. I made sure the reserve would work. I wasn't trying to kill anyone. You tampered with life-saving equipment, Hastings said, her voice like ice. You endangered my life, the lives of my soldiers, and you attempted to destroy the career of a fellow service member. The fact that you didn't intend to kill anyone doesn't make it less serious. She turned to Holloway. Captain, place Sergeant Brennan under arrest. Charges of sabotage, reckless endangerment, and conduct unbecoming. He's to be confined to the brig pending court-martial. Yes, ma'am. Holloway gestured to two MPs who'd been standing by the door. They moved forward and took Brennan by the arms. As they led him away, Brennan shot Claire a look of pure hatred. You think you're special? You're nothing. Just a broken-down rigger who couldn't cut it. Claire met his eyes steadily. And you're a coward who sabotages equipment because you can't accept responsibility for your own failures. We're not the same. The MPs dragged him out. The door closed. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Hastings turned to Claire. Senior Airman Dawson, I owe you an apology. And more than that, I owe you my life. If you hadn't caught that sabotage, if we'd used that chute. She didn't finish the sentence. Just doing my job. Ma'am, Claire said quietly. No. You did much more than that. Hastings studied her. Captain Holloway, I want Senior Airman Dawson's personnel file on my desk within the hour, including her medical records and the decision from the review board that denied her return to jump status. Holloway blinked. Ma'am? Just get me the file, Captain. Yes, ma'am. Hastings turned back to Claire. I saw you watching us land today. I saw the look on your face. That's not the face of someone who's content to stay on the ground. She paused. Before I became a general, I was a pilot. Best pilot in my unit. Then I crashed during a training exercise in '93. Shattered my left arm. Doctors said I'd never fly again. The review board grounded me. Claire's breath caught. She hadn't known this story. But I got a second opinion, Hastings continued. And a third. I worked with specialists. I spent 2 years in physical therapy, proving I could still do the job. Eventually, I got back in the cockpit. And you know what I learned? Sometimes review boards make decisions based on liability rather than ability. Sometimes they're more worried about covering the base's ass than supporting the soldier. She stepped closer to Claire. How's your leg? The one you fractured. Does it hurt? No, ma'am. Not anymore. I've been running 5 miles a day for the past year. I've passed every physical fitness test with scores higher than when I was on jump status, but they still won't let you jump. No, ma'am. Hastings nodded slowly. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to review your file personally. I'm going to consult with some specialists I know. And if, and only if, the medical evidence supports it, I'm going to recommend that your case be reopened. I can't guarantee anything, but I have some pull with the review board. Claire's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Ma'am, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. This could take months, and there's no guarantee. Hastings's expression softened slightly. But you saved my life today, Senior Airman. The least I can do is try to give you back yours. Tears stung Claire's eyes, but she blinked them back. Thank you, ma'am. Hastings held out her hand. Claire took it and they shook, not as a general and an airman, but as two soldiers who understood what it meant to fight for something you loved. One more thing, Hastings said. She rolled up her own sleeve, revealing a tattoo on her right forearm. A helicopter in flight, rotors spinning. Below it, a series of numbers, flight hours. Hundreds of them. I saw your tattoo earlier, Hastings said, when you were examining the chute. A freefall parachute and numbers. Those are jump numbers, aren't they? Slowly, Claire rolled up her right sleeve, revealing the full tattoo. The parachute in freefall, and below it, in precise script, 847. 847 jumps, Claire said quietly. Before the injury, Holloway's eyes went wide. Torres let out a low whistle. 847, Hastings repeated. And how many of those were halo jumps? Halo. High altitude, low opening. The most dangerous kind of jump there was, Claire met her eyes. 612, ma'am. I was assigned to a special operations unit before I transferred here. We did a lot of night insertions, a lot of combat jumps. The room was silent. Hastings smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. Senior Airman Claire Dawson, I think you and I are going to have a very interesting conversation about your future. 3 months later, Claire stood in the door of a C-130, 12,000 feet over Fort Bragg. The wind screamed past her. The ground was a patchwork of green and brown far below. The jumpmaster, Captain Holloway, who'd become an unexpected ally after Brennan's court-martial, gave her a thumbs up. She was wearing a brand-new parachute. One she'd packed herself, under the watchful eye of Master Sergeant Torres. Her medical review had been fast-tracked by General Hastings. 3 specialists had examined her. All 3 had concluded what Claire already knew. She was fit to jump. Fitter than most. The original review board's decision had been overturned. She was back. Ready? Holloway shouted over the wind. Claire looked down at her right forearm. At the tattoo. At the number 847. By the end of today, it would be 848. She looked back at Holloway and grinned. Born ready, sir. Then get out of my plane, Senior Airman. Claire stepped into the void. The free fall was everything she remembered. The rush of wind, the sense of absolute freedom, the perfect clarity that came from falling through the sky with nothing but training and trust between you and the ground. She counted to 10, then pulled her ripcord, the canopy deployed perfectly, smooth, clean, no tangles, no malfunctions. Just a perfect parachute, packed by the best rigger on base, packed by herself. As she floated down through the clear Carolina sky, Claire thought about Sergeant Brennan, now serving 3 years in military prison. She thought about the general who'd given her a second chance. She thought about Torres, who'd believed in her even when she'd stopped believing in herself, but mostly, she thought about the girl who'd spent 2 years folding parachutes in a shed, invisible and forgotten, never complaining, never giving up. That girl had been strong, stronger than anyone knew. But this woman, the one descending through the sky with a parachute she'd packed and a future spread out below her like the whole wide world, she was stronger still. She touched, down light and perfect, exactly where she'd aimed. And as she gathered her chute, Master Sergeant Torres walked over with a grin and a tablet in her hand. Good jump, Dawson. Real good. Torres held up the tablet. Oh, and you got an email from General Hastings. Says she's putting together a new training program for combat riggers. Wants you to help design the curriculum. Says you're the best rigger she's ever seen. Claire smiled. Tell her I'm interested. Already did. Torres clapped her on the shoulder. Welcome back, soldier. We missed you up there. Claire looked up at the sky, at the C-130 circling for another run, at the sun breaking through the clouds. They'd thought she was just folding parachutes. They'd thought she was just a support airman. Just background noise. Just someone who'd failed and faded away. But they'd been wrong. She'd never stopped being a soldier. She'd never stopped being a jumper. She'd just been waiting for her moment to prove it, and now, standing on the drop zone with her boots on the ground and her eyes on the sky, Claire Dawson knew exactly who she was. She was a rigger, a jumper, a soldier, and she was just getting started.